season's pretty bad this year. Some of the 9-inch nails won the time trial.
Can you see the minus 8?
That's pretty cool. I wonder. I like 9-inch nails.
Welcome to Slippery Rock Sports Forum. I'm Madeline Williams, and alongside me tonight are Tim Durr, Ryan Noblet, and Bill Kostkas. This will be our final show before break, so let's get things started. Sidney Crosby has been out of the line for almost 2 months now, and the Penguins are 11-10-1 without him. Bill, with a month and a half in the season left before the playoffs, what should the expectations for the Penguins be for the rest of the season, and how much longer can they stay in contention without Crosby?
I mean, they have a winning record without him. I mean, if you would have told me last October that they would have lost half of their lineup, including Crosby, Malkin, and Stahl for most of the year. I think they've only played 3 games total, where all 3 of them were actually together at this point in the season. I would have said you were on drugs, because I mean, you've never seen a team get battered like this one. But Shero has made a couple deals. It's not the sexy type of deal that everyone else pulls off, but it's like that every time he does it, and we always worry, but it always turns to gold. He's like King Midas. Everything he touches turns to gold. And Crosby still could come back, so their outlook's looking pretty good.
Yeah, see, I think they've they definitely struggled as of late. Right after he got injured, they were doing fantastic. At first, I think they won like 9 out of 11. Then after that, they started to fall apart. They're 3-7-1 in their last 11 right now, and it's going to come down to they have 2 of these guys out. And they have Crosby and Malkin out. They have Orpik, who just went out. Stahl was out early in the season, so it's just been a lot of guys dropping out and different guys having to step up. And as Bill said with the trades, it's something that is, they make these trades. Seems like every year now they're making this trade. They bring 2 or 3 guys in. We're like, we don't know too much about these guys. They don't seem like big ticket guys, and then they step into their roles and just fulfill it and do what they need to do. And I think when Crosby comes back, which hopefully will be sometime in March, he'll really take control and be ready to play again, and he'll be able to lead this team into the playoffs and lead them on a Stanley Cup run.
Yeah, this team's really been surprising me all year. When Crosby went out early, I thought originally they said he'd be out like a week, and he's been out since then. And it's like I think the reason they're doing so well is because of Marc-Andre Fleury. He's 20. I have here 26, 8-4 since November 12th. He's really standing on his head, and I think he's the reason that they're still in contention. They're only 4 points. They're 4 points ahead of Washington. And they're actually a point ahead of Boston, but because of the NHL playoff rules, they're technically 4th, even though they would be 3rd seeded if the division champions didn't go first in the playoffs. And like Bill was saying about the deal, you have Kovalev, Niskanen, and Neal, and they're 3 guys who not a lot of people know a whole lot about. I know who Kovalev is. The other 2 guys I don't know a whole lot about, but they address the needs the team has, not so much. They didn't go out there and get like Kovalchuk or anything. They stayed relatively low budget on these deals, and I think they did a really good job with the trade deadline this year.
Well, James Neal's a pretty young winger. I think he's only 23, and he has 21 goals up to this point. I don't think this is the first year he's surpassed 20 goals. So you set him up on the top line with like Sidney Crosby, who can pass better than anyone in the league. I think that's a good match any way you look at it. This Niskanen they got, I think he's another decent offensive defenseman. And Alexei Kovalev, everything he's about. He's not the guy that's going to post 45 goals and close to 100 points like he did back in the early 2000s. But I think he's a solid guy to have, especially on their power play with no Malkin. So it helps.
Yeah, I think that they're really putting this group together like they have before, and this is going to be ready for when Sid comes back, for them to be in a good position to get things going into the playoffs. And that's just what they've done over the past few years. Is they'll have these guys, and they'll bring in a guy like a Billy Guerin or a Pascal Dupuis and Hal Gill. They bring in guys like that, seems like every year. A couple of these guys who are solid players, not too well known, from a smaller market team, and they just fill the positions that they need to, and everything works good for them, and that's what they're going to do. They're just setting up the pieces in place for whenever Crosby comes back. Orpik will be back in a couple weeks. I don't think Malkin's coming back the rest of the season, but if you get Crosby back, Orpik back in the lineup, and you get all your guys healthy, heading into the playoffs, they'll definitely be solid and have a good chance.
And you can tell by looking at the team they had now. Before recently, they were doing really well. They're 10-8-3. I have down as a record they had before recently. They haven't won a lot here late, but they've been doing. This team in its core is very strong, and with these these players they picked up, and with the team they have now, I mean, at a point this season, all 4 centers were missing, so they're bringing themselves back into contention right now.
Okay, we'll take a quick look at the scores. Tim, you have 4, Bill, you have 4 as well, and Ryan, you have 3. Our next topic will deal with NCAA basketball and how things are shaping up for March Madness. Tim, with Pitt losing this weekend, BYU defeating San Diego State, and number 1 Duke losing, how is everything shaping up for this year's tournament?
Well, I think right now it's pretty chaotic with how everything's shaping up. You have these top seeds that are losing, these number 1 teams. You have BYU, who was ranked 7th, beating San Diego State, who was ranked 4th, and arguably a chance at a number 1 seed because of the other teams that were losing, like Kansas, Ohio State. Now you have Pitt loses again. That might bump them down to a number 2 seed if they fall out of the Big East tournament early. So you don't know who's going to be up number 1 seed. I think this is great for fans because there's so much chaos right now. It's not great for the bracket makers because they really have no idea what's going to happen. You have about 9-10 teams in those that could be number 1, number 2 seeds. But everybody's just playing, this team does good here, this team does good here, and then they lose a couple games. So it's really up in the air. It's going to depend on, who runs through conference tournaments and all of that for who's going to get the number 1 seeds.
Yeah, and the bracket has controversy every year with who should be the 1 seed, who should be the 2 seed, who should be the 16 seed even. But with Duke falling, Ohio State moves back up to number 1, and this has just been one of the craziest seasons I've ever seen in any college sport, really. As soon as you get to number 1, it's like you lose the next week. Was Pitt at number 1 for a while and they lost? No, they weren't. And Duke was at number 1 2 or 3 times this year, keeps losing. Ohio State's been up there, back down, back up. I don't know who's going to end up being those 1 seeds, but I can possibly see BYU or Syracuse getting number 1 seeds if everything goes right for those teams. And actually, Texas still has a chance too if they can turn it around.
I think in terms of 1 seeds, it's all up in the air now, but it's going to be decided before the conference tournament starts. History shows the committee does not look at these conference tournaments and base a lot of the seedings based off of it. It only matters if you win and you're on the bubble. If you win your conference tournament, you get the automatic bid. What we're gonna the trouble we're gonna see is on Saturday when Duke went down to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech was on the bubble, and the win over Duke essentially means they're in the tournament. So that's going to take somebody's spot, and that's where the madness begins.
Yeah, definitely a lot of that madness will be coming with all of that. One thing I want to talk about a little bit, ask you guys about St. John's. They beat Villanova this weekend. They've just been reeling off all these victories in the second half of the season. Where do you see them shaping up in the tournament?
I have them right now, I believe, a 3 or 4 seed, actually, but they could move higher than that if they do well enough in the Big East tournament. Knock off Pitt, beat Nova again. All of a sudden, you're up to a 2 seed.
What about you, Bill?
They just look at me as that team that everyone's going to jump on and tell you to take them deep in the tournament, and they're going to bow out in the first or second round. They've had a great year. They've got a great body of work. They deserve the high seed if they can get it. But a lot of Big East teams don't fare well in the tournament because they beat the hell out of each other in the regular season.
Yeah, personally, I think that they're probably going to be something like a 4 seed when the tournament starts, and they're probably going to be one of those 4 seeds that goes to the second round and then ends up losing, and that's about as far as they're going to go. They might see Sweet 16 if they get a nice path to the Sweet 16, depending on how the bracket lines up. But it's just going to depend on a lot of different things, a lot of different factors playing together. I think if Duke continues to win out, they'll definitely be a 1 seed, but they gotta play UNC again, then they got to play through the ACC tournament. Pitt has a chance to win some games. Texas and Kansas, they're going to cancel each other out, I think, and one's going to get a 1 seed and one team isn't, just because they're both in the same conference, and whoever has the better conference record plays better down the stretch is going to get the number 1 seed. So it just all depends on that.
If you check Joe Lunardi's bracketology page right now, it's Pitt, Ohio State, Kansas, and BYU. So BYU right now is a serious contender for a 1 seed.
Yeah, they beat San Diego State by 13, and San Diego State, they start off the year with like 19 straight wins.
They've been in the top 10
wins.
almost all year.
Yeah, they've been solid all season, and BYU's just coming on so strong lately.
And I think if you look at like a team like St. John's or BYU, would you really pick them to go far? I think BYU has that chance to go possibly Final Four, maybe Elite Eight, probably not Final Four actually. But a team like St. John's, like you guys said, I can only see them making the second round, maybe the Sweet 16, because there's too much experience around them. They're not an experienced team enough, I don't think, to go far.
Now we'll turn back to SRU sports and talk about women's track. The indoor team finished second at the PSAC Championships this weekend. Ryan, second is a pretty good accomplishment. What do you have to say about this for the team, and what do you think the future holds for them?
I think second's great for this team, really. They had strong performances by Jen Harp in the 3,000 and Whitney Hendershot in the long jump, and they earned 108.5 points, 108.5 points this weekend, just behind Shippensburg and in front of IUP and Kutztown. I think this team has a strong core. They can move on, maybe even win next year. Someone else take it.
Well, I think that they have a lot of these seniors that are solid, and they can get the job done right now. And they played good through here. The people that Ryan mentioned, Jen Harp, and they're going to be gone. They're seniors. They're going to be gone the next year. So it's going to be somewhat of a rebuilding. They have other people who are going to step up. I think next year they're going to be more toward like the middle of the pack, 3-4 type of deal. And Shippensburg, they had 145 points, so they really ran away with it seems like. And I know Slippery Rock was second place by a pretty good margin, so they seem to be the two standout teams. So even if Slippery Rock, loses these seniors and can compete next year, they could be up there, in the top 3 once again.
All right, I've got to mop this up. They've been here before many times. They've won the championship many times. So second place for them, knowing Coach Papa and how they run their program. They're disappointed they didn't get it because that's the meet they look forward to all year, and each season's the conference meet. And they came up a little bit short. I mean, second place is great. A lot of teams give an arm or leg to finish there, but not them. They're used to winning. They've been there. I think he's had it's at least 8 or 9 women's titles since he's Papa, since he's coached here. Great performances by Jen Harp and Whitney Hendershot, who I think she actually does high jump. But Jen Harp and Crystal Bernick, they've been second and third in the 3,000, sometimes I think the 5,000. Seems like every race this year, and in cross country and in indoor. But their sprinting was strong. But where they're really strong, and a lot of people don't realize this, is their 4x400 relays. They've got 2 sets, led by Kayla Snyder and the bunch. They've had at least 3 or 4 wins this year. I think they won this week, but they're really a powerhouse if you look in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I think they're one of the teams at Slippery Rock that, there's a lot of teams we talk about. We're always talking about that team that's just hanging on there with like football, basketball. They're that team that just kind of hangs on like that 3rd, 4th region. They can't reach that top team. Well, a lot of times Slippery Rock's, women's track, they are that top team. They're that defining point when it comes to this sport. So finishing second, while still a good achievement, it's always good to be up near the top. But winning, like Bill said, is their main goal, and what they have the capabilities to do almost every season, it seems like. So that's different from where we usually are talking about, well, this team, they're striving for number 2 right now. Well, this team isn't striving for number 2. They're striving for number 1. So they're a little disappointed with that, but I'm sure, it's still a solid finish when you look back on it.
Yeah, they're going to lose Jen Harp, who I compare her, I call her Jesus, because she wins. I mean, she's awesome at what she does, but winning is the goal for that team. I really think, in my opinion, that the women's track program is the best sports program on this campus.
Yeah, and this is their second consecutive second-place finish, actually. And they also lost Shippensburg last year, too. So I feel that these two teams are just far and away, like you guys said, ahead of everyone. And everyone's looking up to Slippery Rock and Chip right now. And they have that, since they're second, they can get the recruiting, they can get the core in there to rebuild from the seniors they lost, and they might even compete for that first-place spot again next year, despite losing some of their top athletes.
Yeah, I think they're definitely along the lines where they're, like Bill said, they're arguably the best sports team here. You look at the other teams, men's soccer I think would be up there with it. They're always competitive in the last at least 5 or 6 years. They won PSAC championships.
In terms of success, I don't think there's not much of an argument.
Yeah, nobody's really coming close to winning the championships.
They're going to lose a lot. They're going to lose Tiffany Tedesco. She's a senior. Jen Harp's a senior. Crystal Barnett's a senior. So
yeah.
The score is a 3-way tie. You all have 7 points. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break. Welcome back to Slippery Rock Sports Forum. Once again, I'm Madeline Williams, and let's get back to the discussion. We're going to stick with SRU sports and talk about women's softball projected to finish 4th in the PSAC this season. Tim, do you think this is an accurate prediction?
I think it makes sense for what they have. They have lost some strong players. They had Jessica Courts and Shree Horvath, both who were their big hitters last season, and they racked up a lot of home runs, a lot of points. But they do have a young group that were a lot of sophomores last year that are going to be coming together and that are all juniors now, like Jenna Geibel and Kirsten Brandt, who are all going to step up, and they have a decent pitching staff. So they have the pieces there to be one of those middle teams, which is where a lot of the SRU teams are in the PSAC. They're in that third, fourth category, and that seems to be where they're at. They don't really have any star standout players as of yet, but there's a chance for some people to step up and hit a lot of home runs and some different things to happen. So we'll see what happens, but I do believe that fourth place is an accurate prediction.
Yeah, I feel that, like Tim said, that fourth place is about accurate for this team. And as we mentioned last week with the baseball team, you really can't even predict the outdoor sports here because of the weather. Once you start getting to the spring, it starts raining. Lots of rainouts happen. So the hot and cold streaks will be like one of those line graphs. It's just like spike up and down. So really, if they can get something going, I think they can do really well this year.
I mean, they finished 22-21 last year. Like Tim said, they lost two of their best hitters, and Jess Courts was a home run and RBI machine. Let's be honest, that's tough. That's a tough spot to fill. They get 14 starters back. So, and as Tim hit on, they're young, and you're going from that sophomore to junior transition. Anything can happen, especially when you're picked in the middle. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going to happen. They could fall, or you have just an equal chance to rise and contend for a top three spot in the conference.
Yeah, I think that while it's an accurate prediction, it is a little higher. I would put them at a 5 seed just because I don't think that they are in that top half. Last year they finished a game above 500. They had some rough stretches through the season in PSAC play, and a lot of that comes with, like Ryan said, rainouts, different things happening where a lot of games are rescheduled, and it's hard to really get going with a nice rhythm whenever you get ready to play a game and it's rained out till a week later, and then you end up stacking up 3 games in a row, so you get a little worn out by that, and then you don't play for a week and a half because a bunch of games get rained out. So it's just a lot of it is really up in the air, and you can't really predict it accurately because of how much things change. But I think they have a solid nucleus there. They have a solid group set up to run it, do solid, finish probably better than they did last year. I think they have more depth this season than they did before. A lot of those sophomores, as I said earlier, are seniors now. They've grown into the system. They've been there a while. So I think they're going to be more solid this year.
You see, as Tim said, you see the baseball team did it last year in terms of the rainouts and snow and stuff, bad weather here. You can't get into a rhythm. That obviously happened to them last year. It's going to happen every year. It's a slipper. Oh, come on, who are we kidding? But one thing they do have going for them with their first, I think, 7 or 8 games is down south and the heat, good weather, and less chance of a rain out there. You're going to be able to get into a rhythm to start off your season.
Yeah, they do have a solid 10 games that they played down in Florida, and hopefully they run through there. They play solid in that. If they can come up here with a good record, 7-3, something like that, through those first 10 games, and then head into PSAC play after that, well, they'll be very well off because I think they're average with the PSAC teams. It's a kind of thing where, given any day, any matchup, they can possibly win the team. They can possibly beat another team in the PSAC. Yeah,
and like Tim said, you have that core nucleus, and they could easily, since they got picked in the middle, since if they think they're better than that, they can jump up easily to the top 3.
That doesn't mean players like Jordan, I think you say Zingas, if I remember at Cheesa Senior, that doesn't mean they can't step up and fill a leadership role that Jess Courts or Shree Horvath did last year. So.
Yeah, definitely last year it was kind of 2 players that were on a different level, and then they had a lot of young talent that was kind of trying to figure out where they fit in at. And I think this year all those players kind of fit into their roles, and it'll be much more solid.
All right, Tim, you have 11, Bill, you have 10, and Ryan, you have 9. Last night, a cast that came close to the All-Star roster played in South Beach when the New Look Knicks, with Carmelo Anthony and Amari Stoudemire, they played the Big 3 from Miami. Defense led to the Knicks beating the Heat and proving that they're contenders in the East. Bill, look back at this game and what it means for the Knicks and the NBA in general.
I didn't catch all of it, but it just adds to this phenomenon of all these stars aligning throughout the league. You got everyone in Boston, now you got Miami, and they're doing it in LA, and now in New York with Melo, Chauncey, and and Amari Stoudemire. You know what? It sets up for another Spurs championship. I don't know about anyone else. That's what I want to see. Stick it to all these goofballs that think they can beat the system. But LeBron again showed his true worth. I mean, he didn't show up when everyone counted on him. Billups, I think they had Chauncey Billups on him on defense for most of the game. So I think Billups was actually the star of the game. Tough win on the road. Give it to the Knicks. They've shown that it's been easier for them to create chemistry on such a short notice, rather than the Heat, who've had since training camp to do so.
The Heat, since they've gotten Carmelo have been like up and down. The night before they lost to the Cavs, they were the worst team in the league, and then they come back and beat the Heat, who's one of the best teams in the league, obviously. But like Bill said, I kind of also want to see the Spurs win, just because the Heat and the Knicks and the Lakers, everyone's just, and then you get a bunch of old guys down there, and San Antonio just stick it to all of them.
Yeah, well, San Antonio was the team that I followed until LeBron came into the league. They were my favorite team, just because I thought they actually played basketball still. They actually had defense and stuff. They actually played the game of basketball how it was supposed to be played. It wasn't just a sideshow, or as Bill would call it, a circus out there. But I think the one good thing for the NBA is where these stars are aligning are at the most storied franchises. You have the Lakers, you have the Celtics, you have these teams, the Knicks starting to come back. Those are the three teams that really, when you talk about the NBA to anybody and you say, name a team, that's one of the teams they're going to name. Those are, the three most popular teams, the three most storied franchises in the NBA. So when you have those teams doing good, and now you have the Heat, you have the most, popular player in the game playing down there with two other solid players, you have these teams that kind of distance themselves a little bit, and it gets rid of the parity, which is something you'd like to have in sports. You'd like to have a chance where, any one of the 30 teams had a chance to win. But now you have these 6-7 teams that are kind of jumping out there. And you can't forget about the other teams that are lesser known, like the Orlando Magic and then the San Antonio Spurs, who are proven champions. And they just play, more old school basketball. They have Tim Duncan. They have Manu Ginobili. They have these guys out there who just get the job done night in and night out, and they have the best record in the NBA.
I just remembered my head was being brainwashed by the Oscars, but I was checking in during commercial breaks. Yeah, that might be good that now we're recognizing how these legendary teams are coming back, but the way the Carmelo deal went down, I think it's a bad sign for the game. Star players are forcing teams' hands and saying, hey, trade me now, this is what I want, do it or else. I don't think that's good.
Because they were talking the whole offseason about Carmelo going to the Knicks, and all of a sudden, halfway through the season, he's there, totally almost destroying Denver's chances of a championship, but lose your best player. But I think we need to point out also that teams like Tim said, like the Magic, but also the Bulls and the Hawks are also threats in the East. So maybe one of these smaller teams will step up, knock off some of the bigger teams, and we'll have a pretty exciting playoffs this year in the NBA.
Well, yeah, I think the playoffs are going to be good. They're going to be exciting. You have a good grouping of teams. You have the Celtic, the Heat, the Magic. They're kind of they're that branch team, which they're not that well known, but they do have Dwight Howard. They do have some superstars on the team. So that's what, they're like the branch there. Then you have the teams below them with some of the lesser known guys. But as Ryan just said, the Bulls are stepping out there. Derrick Rose is playing fantastic. They just beat the Heat a couple nights ago, and Derrick Rose had 30 points in the game.
Chris Bosh was 1 for 18 from the field that night.
Yeah, it's one of those things where even when you have three superstars, it's less of a chance, that you're going to have all three of them have a bad night. But when somebody has a 1 for 18 shooting night, that really kills your chances, especially when it's one of your star players.
Yeah, all these stars can learn all they want, play for less money. But if you don't have chemistry, it doesn't mean squat when it comes down to playoff time.
Yeah, and as we've been saying this whole time, the Spurs are the team with the most chemistry, and I think they're the best chance. They're kind of the underdog, but they have the best record.
All right, we'll take a quick look at the scores for one last time. Bill and Tim, you're both tied with 13, and Ryan, you're right behind you with 11, okay? Now it's time for our final topic of the night. This past weekend, the NFL Combine took place, and some people stood out while others hurt their draft stock, with Cam Newton being the main talking point. Ryan, what do you see from the Combine this weekend? And more specifically, what did Cam Newton do for his draft stock?
Well, I think the Combine's really a chance, not for the bigger players. The bigger players just are destined to fall at this. But some of the smaller players like Ricardo Lockett from Fort Valley State and Edmund Gates from Albine Christian, their draft prospects have shot up. They got the 40 times, while I don't really like them, I think they're kind of ridiculous that even offensive linemen are measured by this 40 time, pretty arbitrary measurement of yardage. But these two guys were in the top of the top 40, and you look at these wide receivers from small schools, like people like Terrell Owens, people like Jerry Rice even came from small school, came some of the best receivers ever. So everyone's looking for that next Jerry Rice, that next Terrell Owens to come in their team. But as for Cam Newton, I think he didn't really hurt his draft prospects because a lot of teams realized he has talent, but he's not really proven himself yet. He won the national championship and all that, but I think he needed to stay another year in college for him to really prove himself, to develop as a player. He's not really he's got a great arm, he's got great legs, but I just don't think he's fully developed like he could be yet. He should have stayed at college another year.
Well, this is something with Cam Newton. There was a better chance he was going to hurt himself than show up great, just because, everybody knows he doesn't have the greatest arm, and if he throws it there and passes how he usually does when all eyes are on him, and you're not seeing him scramble around in the pocket and everything and do those little things that he does great, and you're just seeing him step back and throw a ball. Well, that's not going to be his best thing because he's not a pocket passing quarterback. So he showed the numbers he expected in the 40 of the other categories. But, for him passing out there, a lot of people thought it wasn't good. It's going to hurt his draft stock a little bit, but I don't think it's going to have too much of an effect on it. And also, touching on just the Combine in general, Brandon Fusco from Slippery Rock, he was in the Combine, and he showed up good in some categories. He ran one of the fastest 40s for for offensive linemen, and he played, I think he was a top one. He was one of the top ones in the 3-cone drill, just right off the lead. He had 7.29. Yeah, he was third because we're the top people. The top person only had like a 7.2, so he was barely off of the top spot in that. So he stepped up where he needed to, but on NFL.com it says that he has all the makings to be a solid player, but they just don't think he's going to be that starter quite yet. He just doesn't have all the strength and all the other abilities there. He's solid, but not the best.
Again, the Combine is something that I believe is a circus. I don't see why what you do on the field can't be used to tell how good of a football player you are in most cases. But Cam Newton was the one with the microscope on him, even though 8 of the last 12 quarterbacks taken in the first round have not thrown at the Combine, as Missouri's Blaine Gabbert did. That's the best thing you could do, just go up there, run, do a couple interviews, and be on your way. Watching Cam Newton yesterday, throwing looked terrible. I mean, the guy's fast, he's agile, he did well in all the other drills. When it came to throwing, he was way off. But he is a pretty accurate passer in games. With defenders chasing pads on, it's different than just throwing it in Under Armour shorts up in Indianapolis. But a couple guys that did make a name for themselves. Stephen Paye set the Oregon State's defensive lineman set the bench press record. I think at 49. The previous was 45. Alabama's receiver Julio Jones pretty much established himself as the second best receiver in the draft behind Georgia's A.J. Green. Pitt's Jonathan Baldwin went up there and laid an egg, as did Deion Lewis. I think ran almost a 4.7 40, which for a running back is not good at all.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing where I think that when it comes to the Combine, there's not really a big ceiling. There's not really a big chance for uprise. There's a ceiling put right over these guys where you're only really going to drop because if you run good, well, they say that's expected of you. That's what you should have done. But if you mess up just a little bit, well, then everybody's on you saying about, how bad you are, how much you struggled, and then that drops your draft stock some. I still, like you said, what they do on the field is what really matters. So if he can put up, 50 reps in the bench press, that's not really a big thing.
The Combine's for people like Fusco that need to improve their draft stock. That's what it's for.
Okay, well, it appears there is a tie. So, between Bill and Tim, and you both had 17, and Ryan, you had 15. So I guess you both can say whatever. You get a little bit of time.
We both want to talk about the Oscars.
Yeah, we both had a little about the Oscars to say. Good, Bill. I'll let you take it.
I noticed one thing. If you follow me on Twitter, if you care, it's PSOT Barkeep, all one word. I ripped the whole show. The whole time I watched it. I noticed when people were doing their speeches, I'd like to thank the Academy. And again, I'd like to thank the Academy. Oh, I have to thank the Academy. And they're thanking the Academy like they're some sort of god. They're nothing. The Star Wars has some of the greatest movies ever to don a cinema screen, and that doesn't win Best Picture. You're nothing.
Avatar.
Yeah. Avatar.
James Cameron puts too much stuff to look at in his movies.
Yeah, well, I'll just add a little bit to that so the show's not running on forever. But, Yeah, I definitely think the thing for the Oscars lately has been to give Best Picture to the underdog. Slumdog Millionaire won it over Ben Button, which was just completely ludicrous. Ben Button changed my life. The Hurt Locker beat Avatar, which I think The Hurt Locker was a fantastic movie, but everybody was all about Avatar. And that's just kind of been the thing. And I think Inception should have won it. It was, a completely game-changing movie that's really nothing like that has ever been done, in the past
Just
10,
the
15
idea
years.
of that movie has never been done.
Yeah.
That's a setup for it.
Yeah, along that line's never been done, and you're going to give it to, like a war documentary.
The Academy is biased towards imagination. That's my final word.
All right, I think we'll end it on that.
Okay, thanks for watching Slippery Rock Sports Forum. Have a good night.
Passionate.